Okay, hello friends, and we're continuing now in Esoteric Psychology Volume 2 with Laws of the Soul webinar commentaries, number 24. And we've reached a new section. When a new section's coming up and there's about 5 minutes to go, you will find me stalling and saying different things to round off the previous program. That seems to be the way it goes. And now we begin with the characteristics of the new groups. This brief summary will serve to give some of the elementary requirements and by means of a broad generalization to indicate why such groups are being formed. And I think, so many of us find ourselves involved in group work, and we want to know whether the groups that we are working with have the characteristics that Master DK lists as of the new groups. We can now perhaps widen our vision a little and at the same time look at the groups in greater detail. One of the characteristics distinguishing the groups of world servers and knowers — you can be a server without being a knower, of course — is that the outer organization will hold them, which will hold them integrated, will be so nebulous that to the outer observation it will be practically non-existent. He did say that organization goes hand in hand with criticism, and perhaps the more rigid the organization, the more severe the criticism. Certainly this is true of the new group of world servers. There is no really outer organization for this group, and it is a subjective group appreciated subjectively. That such a group would exist on the outer levels is perhaps rather invisible, but that it exists subjectively on the level of the psyche, of the level of the soul, is clear to those who have that kind of perception. The group will be held together by an inner structure of thought and a close telepathic interrelation. There is adherence to certain thoughts which are in line with a shared purpose, and of course the more such a group works together, the more they know each other's thoughts. It's really like one thought field. The great ones whom we all seek to serve, and he means this for himself as well, there's always a greater, are thus linked and can at the slightest need and with the least expenditure of force get into rapport with each other. So the very highest beings, the masters, as far as humanity is concerned, are linked in this manner. And they have much greater ability to come en rapport with each other when there is real need. Notice the need is there and not just the desire to have a chat. They are all attuned to a particular vibration, and so must these groups be attuned. Let but one color blend them, one note, one purpose. So the friction prevents communication, basically, and the friction in these higher groups really doesn't exist. They are realizing themselves as being of one soul. There will thus be collected together people demonstrating the wide difference in nature, who are found on differing rays, who are of very varying nationalities, and the product of widely separated environments and heredity. At least this is so in the new group of world servers. Besides these factors, which immediately attract attention, well, let's look at this. Different in nature, differing rays, different nationalities, varying nationalities, and widely, geographically, these separated environments and heredity. Beside these factors which immediately attract attention, there will also be found an equal diversity in the life experience of the souls contacted. So let's just say that the individual factors are not the same, yet they must share something, correct? The complexity of the problem confronting the group members is also tremendously increased when one remembers the long road, a distinctive reincarnational road that each has traveled, and the many factors and characteristics emerging out of a dim and distant past. So, very much variety in origin, in path, in past and present energies. So these many factors and characteristics emerging out of a dim and distant past which have tended to make each person what he is now. How interesting to see the strands. To see the strands which come together to make us what we are now. When therefore one dwells on the difficulties and the possible barriers to success, the question will arise, and rightly so, what makes it possible to establish this group interrelation? Really, he's dealing here with the new group of world service. I think when a group exists for specialized service in a particular, well, it doesn't have to be a locale today, but at least for a specialized service of a certain kind, they tend to share more the same rays and perhaps methods of working within reason. But now we're talking about the new group of world servers scattered all over the world, which is a kind of a reflection of the ashram coming together on the Buddhic plane following 1925. Interesting about following 1924, the fourth ray started coming into power strongly, and the ashrams, the majority of them, moved onto the Buddhic plane, which is ruled in one sense by the fourth ray being the fourth plane. So the number 4 became very prominent, and then think of it, the new group of world servers ruled by the number 4. So all of this, the movement of the ashrams to the fourth plane, the new group of world servers ruled by the number 4, the Buddhic plane being the fourth in order and ruled by the fourth ray and the second ray as well. And all of this meaning a kind of elevation for humanity. I wouldn't be surprised whether it's the fourth ray of the soul. It's magnetic work. I think it's magnetic work would come into strong expression. So what then provides a common meeting ground? And when you're talking about common ground, the fourth ray is so important to find the similarities within apparent difference. The answer to these questions is of paramount importance and necessitates a frank handling. So what is it that provides a common meeting ground amidst all of this incredible diversity? All this diversity. And he said, well, there's going to be, if he says a frank handling, there's going to be some straight words. We find in the Bible, in him, the words, in him we move and live and have our being. Well, what logos does that pertain to, or finally the ultimate logos in the universe? This is a statement of a fundamental law in nature and the enunciated basis of the relation which exists between the unit soul functioning in a human body and God. Okay, so it's we're dealing with the relation of the soul unit with the encompassing life of God, a logos, or successive logoi. It determines also, insofar as it is realized, the relation between soul and soul. It's kind of a brotherhood due to living and being within the same being. We live in an ocean of energies. We ourselves are conjurees of energies. This is the occult way of thinking of things and utilizes quite a bit of the fifth ray in doing so. And all these energies are closely interrelated and constitute the one synthetic energy body of our planet. So we're speaking planetarily in scope. Okay, so speaking planetarily. And the him in whom is, in this case, the planetary logos. So, so we are the unit soul, the soul related to God and the soul related to other souls within one great energy field, which is the field of the planetary deity. It must be carefully borne in mind that the etheric body of every form in nature is an integral part of the substantial form of God himself. The substantial form. When he says substantial, we mean that which stands beneath. Sometimes we think that substance and matter are the same thing, forgetting the idea of standing underneath, substance. Our materialistic thinking inclines us toward that conclusion, but in fact the one etheric energy body is shared by all, and it is the energy body of the planetary deity, and it doesn't stop there, of course. There's only one etheric body through all of manifested space within the universal logos. So this is not the dense physical form, but what esotericists regard as the form-making substance, the, well, in some modern words as they've come through, the morphogenetic field, or is it the morphogenic field? The idea is the same. We use the word God to signify the one expression of the one life which animates every form on the outer objective plane. And when we use the word animate, we come into the idea of soul and also of vital electric body. Animation suggests life, soul, and the vital electric body. The etheric or energy body, therefore, of every human being is an integral part of the etheric body of the planet itself, and consequently of the solar system. And this is an idea that he has repeated when he is discussing, the field of space in the introduction of esoteric astrology. It seems so important to keep this vital electric relationship connected to our thought process, or our thought process connected to the contemplation of it. Through this medium, every human being is basically related to every other expression, basically, of the divine life, minute or great. So this is against the great heresy of, great heresy of separateness. Well, that's one we should have, isn't it? All right. A great heresy of separateness. Aha, right. Since it's, I already did that one, didn't I? So it has to be in capital letters, and we'll have it. So through this medium, the vital electric etheric medium, and etheric medium, this kind of relationship exists. And remember that on every plane there are 4 subplanes which can be considered for that plane as etheric in nature. The function of the etheric body is to receive energy, impulses, and to be swept into activity by these impulses or streams of force emanating from some originating source or other. So to receive is one thing, but also to act is another. To receive and to act. Okay. To receive subtle energies and to express them. The etheric body is in reality naught but energy itself. Naught but energy? Well, there's nothing that is anything but energy, and energy is God. God is life. There is naught but energy, for God is life. It is composed of myriads of threads of force, or tiny streams of energy, held in relation to the emotional and mental bodies and to the soul by their coordinating effect. So it is held in relation to these vehicles, and later probably in relation to the triadal vehicles as well, once the Antakarana is completed and functioning. Tiny streams of energy. And of course, these have to be visible in some way once our etheric vision is developed. These streams of energy in their turn have an effect on the physical body and swing it into activity of some kind or another. So the third ray is involved here relative to the etheric body. It's the ray of activity, and when we look at the astrology of it, it's Aries mental body, Taurus desire body, Gemini with all of its mercurial activity, etheric body. Swing it into activity of some kind or another. It is the vitalization of the physical body. The vitality causes activity. So let's look at this. The vitality of the etheric body causes the activity of the dense physical body. According to the nature and power of whatever type of energy may be dominating the etheric body at any particular time, and energies from all levels are eventually able to animate the etheric body. Maybe we don't have in our etheric body at this time so much triadal activation. Maybe not even, maybe the personality is largely what is activating the etheric body for many of us, and to some degree the soul energy, but gradually even the monad will be the activator of the etheric body. Then we will have what's called the body of fire. Gradually, even the monadic vehicle will animate the etheric body later in the evolutionary process. Through the etheric body, therefore, circulates energy emanating from some mind, whether it's our own mind or the mind of higher beings or the mind of the planetary logos, because mind does direct energy. We have to realize that it's an aspect of the will in a way, and it gives directs energy into certain relationships. With humanity in the mass, response is made unconsciously to the rulings of the universal mind. All things are directed, and free will does not really exist with respect to having to respond to the universal mind and its intentions. This is complicated in our time and age by a growing responsiveness to mass ideas, which veil that which the universal mind directs. This is sometimes called public opinion or the rapid evolving human mentality, and okay, let's see what happens here. It is a real force. And perhaps one can even feel one's opinion being swayed by this conjury or flow of thoughts. Suddenly one's mind changes. Has one been swept by a prevailing stream of energy shared by many? One has to examine how it is that changes in one's own thought process come about. Within the human family, there are also found those who respond to that inner group of thinkers who, working in mental matter, control from the subjective side of life the emergence of the great plan and the manifestation of the divine purpose. So what do we have here so far? We have the unconscious response to the universal mind, response to public opinion, and responds to the thinking of the spiritual hierarchy of the planet. We have these three so far discussed. This group of thinkers, with a capital T as we see, fall into 7 main divisions and is presided over by 3 great lives or super conscious entities. And note the Kabbalistic formation of the 3 hovering above the 7. So where there are 7, there are also a superior 3. These 3 are the Manu, the Christ, the Mahat Shohan. The masters are superconscious, but particularly it is said that the 3 great lords are superconscious. These 3 work primarily through the method of influencing the minds of the adepts and initiates. Well, the Manu, Christ, Mahat Shohan, maybe are not working so much with the individual initiate, not working so much with the individual initiate, and especially with the individual disciple. These latter, the minds of the adepts and initiates, well, the initiates are included. Okay, so let's leave that out. Let's say not so much with the individual disciple. Right, with the. These latter, in their turn, influence the disciples of the world, and these disciples, each in his own place. Notice how time and space enters into that, because disciples are more localized than the non-local initiates. Each in his own place and on his own responsibility works out his or her or their concept of the plan and seeks to give expression to it as far as possible. So the 3 great lords, the masters, the initiates, the disciples, and I suppose the aspirants, influencing in graded measure humanity at last. These disciples have hitherto worked very much alone, except when karmic relationships have revealed them to each other. Could we say, like, Saint, how about Saint? Can I get a saint out of that? Saint Francis and Saint Clare? Is that possible? Saint Francis, 2 great disciples, even initiates, revealed to each other. So when karmic relationships have revealed them to each other, and telepathic intercommunication has been fundamentally confined to the hierarchy of adepts and initiates. So these disciples have hitherto worked very much alone, except when karmic relationships have revealed them to each other. And telepathic communication has been fundamentally confined to the hierarchy of adepts and initiates, both in and out of incarnation, and to their individual work with disciples. So not, let's just say, not so much telepathic relationships between disciples heretofore. These groups, therefore, which have hitherto worked entirely subjectively, can and will be duplicated externally, and that's what's happening now. The hierarchy is externalizing, partially through the duplication of its nature in lesser groups. So the hierarchy is externalizing, partially through the duplication of its nature in external groups. And the new groups will come into being largely as an externalization, experimental as yet, of the groups which have functioned behind the scenes, yes. So, therefore, we are to find a way to emulate the way they function. and they will be motivated from the central group, the hierarchy of masters. In other words, we really are meant in our groups, we really are meant to reflect as faithfully as possible the inner group and groups of masters. Well, that shows us perhaps how far we are from actually being able to do that, with their understanding held in common, their telepathic rapport, their seeing the plan clearly, their harmonious cooperation, all of these things they have achieved and we have yet to achieve. We can ask ourselves, are we really functioning in reflection of these inner groups, as is meant to be the case before long? An experiment trying out the possibility and seeing how it has to be adapted or tweaked, what adjustments have to be made here. This experiment is primarily as yet one of group integration and the method whereby it can be developed. So we're at that stage right now. Without integration, there will be no telepathy, of course. Without integration, there can be no telepathy. The reason why those on the inner side are now experimenting with this group idea is because it is definitely a new age trend. So they are under the impress of the Lord of the we'll do it this way. Lord of the constellation Aquarius. Lord of the constellation Aquarius. They are under that impress, and the tide is on and the time is right, and the will of Aquarius is to influence humanity so that these groups can be formed. Well, I mean, the will of Aquarius is vast, but at least as it affects Earth, there will be an influence which allows for a speeding up of the expression of the divine plan and of the initiatory process, because groups themselves can be properly prepared for initiation just the way individuals were before. They are seeking to utilize the increasing bias of the human being towards coherence and integration, and we might say why, the second ray soul of the planetary logos is emerging. And the reappearance of the Christ will bring this forth. It must be remembered, however, and with constancy, that unless there is a subjective coherence, all the outer forms must eventually disintegrate or never cohere at all. So with all of our groups, we ask, what is the condition of our subjective coherence? Even though there may be outer moments of unpleasantness between the group workers, is there a sufficient subjective coherence on the level of soul to hold it all together? And those groups which persist, I think, over a long period of time, despite their, outer superficial disagreements, must have that subjective coherence. It is only the subjective links and the subjective work that determines success. So they're not judging by outer standards at all, are they? The master looks at the subjective links. The outer links do not interest him, as they are derivative of the inner and subjective links. It's only the subjective links and the subjective work that determine success, and these must, particularly in the new group work, be based on egoic relations and not on personal attachments and predilections. So the true new groups let but one color blend them. That's the egoic color. The egoic color blends them, and thus their unity appears. These help where there is at the same time an egoic relation. In other words, if the personality relations become a subset of the inner egoic links, then they can be useful. Where that exists, that egoic relation, then something can be formed which is immortal and as lasting as the soul itself, and hence the persistence of the spiritual hierarchy, whether visible and externalized or relatively invisible and behind the scenes. Because there have been times when the hierarchy has been, in a way, driven back and not visible to the majority of human beings. But still it persisted because the soul persists. And for our types of groups, well, perhaps there will be some reasonable, useful persistence for them if they are true soul groups. So we're looking for the emergence, let's say, looking for the emergence of true soul groups whose basic animating energy is that of the soul, and then the outer harmonies or frictions can be used accordingly, but they will not obscure the soul relationship. One practical point should be made clear. These groups will for some time be what might be called pattern groups, and therefore must be formed very slowly and with care. So, it's definitely not a question of throwing people together expediently. Expediency is sometimes considered to be a third-ray glamour, looking for that which works on the outer plane smoothly, regardless of whether it goes along with an intended spiritual plan. So the wise use of slow action, it's a second-ray process, this very slow formation, a second-ray process, and with much caution, much care. There is no rush, no hurry, and yet there is no time to lose. So I think we do have to make haste slowly when we see what is involved, and we want to build firmly and solidly good foundations upon which much future work can be based. And this may say, well, we're moving very slowly compared to the need, but the need cannot be met unless the groups that are built have the necessary quality to serve. Each person forming part of the new groups will be tested and tried and subjected to much pressure. So it makes you think, have we really reached the point where the new groups are being formed? How is it that the present groups are formed? And the pressure, I suppose, is somehow to conform to the purpose for which the group was formed and which the forming members responded to. Every incoming member will find that type of pressure. This will be necessary if the groups are to stand through this transition period of the present. So we can expect in our group where, Saturn is coming into Aquarius in terms of the decanate, and for 720 years, in a way, will rule that decanate. This will be the time of applied pressure under Saturn for all those who wish to form part of the true new groups. It will not be easy for disciples to form these groups. I'm remembering, first coming to the Arcane School back in 1980, it was a long time ago, 33 years ago, 33 and a half years ago, and realizing that it wasn't really an easy place to work. Now that could have been for good reasons or for bad, no external group is perfect. But there were adjustments to be made. I guess it's fortunate for me at that time that Saturn was opposing my sun. No, pretty much that. And during that period of adjustment, I certainly learned the meaning of Saturn. It will not be easy for disciples to form these groups. The methods and techniques will be so different from those of the past. People may evince real desire to participate in the group life and to form part of the group activity, but the real difficulty will consist in bringing their personal life and vibration into conformity with the group life and rhythm. So, conformity, Saturn, does rule in the initial stages. And there must be subservience, which seems unpleasant to many, as their personal prerogatives will be secondary to the group necessity. The narrow path which all disciples have to tread, and in the early stages, these groups will consist primarily of those on the probationary path or on the path of discipleship. And, what is he implying? That maybe later, more human beings who are not yet probationary disciples, pledged, PR, probationary disciples may join. So, in the early days, these groups will consist primarily of those on the probationary path and path of discipleship. This requires obedience to certain instructions which have been handed down to us from the ancient past. So again, Saturn and obeying the rules. The Tibetan has given us so many rules which, for those who are individually and as a group attempting to accomplish something of a truly spiritual nature in the modern sense, they have to follow these rules. So these are followed willingly. Willing assent is given and with eyes open, but no rigid adherence to the letter of the law is ever asked or expected. So some degree of autonomy in the following of these rules is granted. But they are followed willingly, and if there is rebellion and all of that, it wouldn't make sense to be trying to integrate such a unit into one of the new groups when the attitude is always one of rebellion and contesting and going against the spiritual laws and against the purpose of the group. No matter how much, such a person could enter wanting to control the group and direct it in his own, according to his own vision. But that would not work. Flexibility within certain self-imposed limits is always needed. We must learn to limit ourselves. Yet that flexibility must not be set in motion by any personality inertia or mental questioning. So if we have these kind of foibles, we're lazy, and we're doubting, let's say laziness and doubt must not be the reason why the group tries to accommodate a new member. Other reasons must be there, perhaps the energy system of the individual and the best way that individual can contribute according to their energy system. Many adjustments are made for the welfare of the group and the welfare of the individual. Secondarily, are made for the welfare of the group and of the individual secondarily. But the group personnel is considered because, after all, the energy system of the people involved. These energy systems are instruments whereby the group can express. So within a certain limitation, we want to make sure that the energy system of the individual serves the group purposes as well as possible, and this means keeping those energy systems in good shape and, of course, in harmony with the larger purpose. The Great Group Training Experiment. This Great Group Training Experiment. This is quite a little phrase here with a lot of G's, G being the great group. The number 7, the 7th letter. This Great Group Training Experiment, 7th ray is so suggested here, now being initiated on Earth through a new activity of hierarchy, which is the interpenetration to a greater extent of the ashrams, and then also the stimulation for the formation of the new group of world servers. Anyway, there's a great group training experiment now being initiated on Earth through the activity, a new activity of hierarchy. You know, we say new activity, and I would say from 2025 on especially, because it was after that, maybe after a 7-year period, that the new group of world servers really began to take shape, will demonstrate to the watching guides of the race, and they are these guides in Shambhala, just how far the disciples and aspirants of the world are ready to submerge their personal interests in the group good. Just how far the disciples and aspirants of the world are ready to submerge their personal interests in the group good. And this is not easy. DK told us how much sacrifice of time and interest is required for service. So there is the subjugation, the submergence, the subservience of personal interests to the group good. How sensitive they are as a group to instruction and guidance, and how free the channels of communication are between the groups on the outer plane and the inner group, which is largely a hierarchy, and between them also and the masses whom they are expected eventually to reach. How free the channels of communication are between the groups on the outer plane and the inner group, and between them also and the masses whom they are expected to reach. So let's just say there is much to consider and evaluate. Sensitivity, submergence. Well, let's put these words down, you know. Submergence, sensitivity, open sensitivity, connection between hierarchy and the groups, and the connection between the groups and humanity. All these must be considered and evaluated. A master's group of disciples, I wonder why the apostrophe is always missing there. A master's group of disciples on the inner side of life forms an integrated organism characterized by mutual love, life, and interplay. This is our ideal, isn't it? You know, it's set for us. This state is that which we must learn to approximate. The relationships in that group are entirely mental and astral, and hence the limitations of the force body and of the physical brain and dense physical body are not felt. So, well, we're talking about those in the master's group who have no physical bodies. So these are not the, well, this is not the hierarchy per se, but this is the inner group of disciples associated with the ashram. But anyway, the etheric body and physical body must be quite some limitations. Well, time is pretty much the product of the perception which comes to human consciousness through the physical brain. And without the physical brain, without the etheric brain, there's an entirely different attitude, I suppose, towards time and the ashramic process. So even the inner groups of the masters, who are not yet masters themselves, but who are disciples on the inner side of life, are characterized by integration, love, life, interplay. This leads to a greater inner facility and understanding and to a reciprocal interplay. So many misunderstandings, let's just say, in these inner groups, so many misunderstandings common to the outer group will be avoided. It is wise here to remember that the astral potency is far more strongly felt than on physical levels, and hence the emphasis laid upon emotional desire control in all treatises on discipleship and on preparation for that state. Otherwise, one could find oneself rather useless in the inner groups, because the astral vibration would not be suitable. So that's interesting that, well, our astral bodies, our emotional desire bodies are seen for what they are on the inner planes, and in a way we are training even now through emotional desire control for functions in these inner groups related to some ashram. At least that's an important goal for disciples at this time. Now an effort is being made to see if such group activity and interplay can be set up on the physical plane, which will consequently include the physical body apparatus and the brain. And I suppose before that time there were insuperable difficulties. But let's just say, we'll say here that what used to be considered insuperable difficulties for such an outer arrangement are now being overcome. So at least an effort is being made to see if any such group activity which involves such a close spiritual psychological rapport, which involves such close physical psychological rapport can be accomplished. The difficulties are therefore great because the brain, the etheric brain, the physical brain, physicality as a whole has to be offset. It may be with our new internet capabilities. That kind of rapport that is based on the mind and the astral body and the soul will be more easily generated without the limitations of the dense physical body. So these limitations are not felt in the inner groups, and maybe with the new types of communication, they're at least somewhat muted. What has to be the technique employed in handling this more difficult situation, which is only possible because the work of the masters' groups has been so effective? I guess these are ashramic groups and trained inner groups. In other words, the outer relation can now be attempted because the inner success has been pronounced amongst the inner workers. Much may depend upon just how far we will react to this interplay and how much it will mean to us in our lives. This interplay with the inner groups and with the masters themselves and with each other as souls. So this embodies a most practical occult method of work. So much of the success of the outer groups will depend on just how much we can react to the inner interplay, which has been so successful. Interplay, let's say, which has been so successful. This embodies a most practical method of occult work. The astral physical brain reaction should be regarded as non-existent, and here he means even the astral reactions, and allowed to lapse below the threshold of consciousness there to die for lack of attention. We, as they say, pay them no mind. The emphasis is held steadily on mental and egoic relations, and the frictions are mostly of an astral physical nature. Whoop. And they are not given attention in group work of this kind. Okay. Not given attention in group work of this kind. Right. Well, I think we will go on. We will go on with this, even though we are 10 minutes before. We'll just flow along and make this a longer, we will make this a longer kind of program. Because I think here some of the kinds of groups that are found in discipleship in the New Age are here discussed. So we're dealing here with the experimental nature of the groups. So I've said that these groups constitute an experiment, and, even the masters are not sure, of the outcome or of the timing of an eventually positive outcome. And we're told sometimes, even the Christ does not know how humanity will react to certain possibilities. This experiment is fourfold in nature, and a concise statement may clarify conjecture. So let's look at fourfold in nature. They are an experiment in founding and starting focal points in the human family through which certain energies can flow out into the entire race of men. And these energies are 10 in number. Well, this would fit with the 10 C groups. But focal points of energy, because after all, humanity will be saved through the application of subtle energy. And if energy can be properly delivered to the proper places in the proper time, and humanity can be taught to assimilate those energies, then we have a very good situation for redemption. They are, these groups are also, they are an experiment in inaugurating certain new techniques in work and in modes of communication. I'm sure telepathy will be involved here, and subtle methods, SUBTLE, methods of work will be instituted, and telepathy will be used. It is to be noted that in these last three words, modes of communication, is summed up the whole story. And we might say, hierarchy knows that humanity must be reached. So what are the modes of communication which will reach humanity? These groups are intended to facilitate interrelation or communication as follows. Okay. So, okay, so now comes the discussion of what we might call the 10 groups here discussed in a preliminary manner and later in Dyna 1. So, well, maybe some of the Dyna 1 work had already been written or was being written at this time. They will be occupied with an endeavor to facilitate communication between individuals so that the rules and methods whereby speech can be transcended may become known and the new ways of intercourse brought about. Well, this is obviously the telepathic work, and this is correlating. This method is correlating with the group of telepathic communicators, the C group number 1. So communication will eventually be from soul to soul on the higher levels of the mental plane, and this involves complete alignment so that soul, mind, brain are completely at one for the communicating parties. And also mind to mind on the lower levels of the mental plane, and this involves a complete integration of the personality or lower self so that mind and brain are at one. We remember the integrated personality is formed around the mental unit on the mental plane, on the lower mental plane. So soul-to-soul communication, I wonder if we know when that is occurring, and maybe we more readily recognize the mind-to-mind communication on the lower levels of the mental plane. Students must remember that these two distinctive contacts, and bear in mind also that the greater contact need not necessarily include the lesser. Telepathic communication between the different aspects of the human being is entirely possible at varying stages of unfoldment. They all do not have to be present. Okay, so these are the new groups. These modes of communication will be occurring, and the methods whereby speech can be transcended will be known, and the groups in general, every one of them, is facilitating communication of some kind. Now, communication is the precursor to union. And Mercury, the planet of communication, is involved. So, what is communicated, from what to what, it is all part of the unification of the life of humanity with itself and with that of the planet. Okay. Then they will work at the establishment of communication between that plane, which is the plane of illumination and pure reason, the Buddhic plane, and the plane of illusion, which is the astral plane. Now, this sounds very much like the observers of reality, or the so-called a glamour group, or the group that should be working at the dissipation of glamour and help human beings see clearly and react in a manner that does not distort perception. It should be remembered that our great task is to dispel the world illusion through the inpouring of the illumination or of light. So the light of the mind is focused in a beam, and this works at the dissipation of glamour. So when enough groups have been started that have this for their objective, there will be found upon the physical plane those channels of communication which will act as mediators between the world of light and the world of illusion. So the world of light is considered the plane of pure reason and of buddhi. It's the higher light, maybe sometimes called the clear cold light, and the world of illusion, well, particularly the astral plane. But some aspects of the mental plane may be involved, particularly the astral plane. They will be transmitters of that type of energy which will break up the existing Maya or illusion and dissipate the ancient thought forms. So, really, all the levels of the personality and the malfunctions of all the levels are involved. So, this can also be an attack against not only glamour, but illusion and Maya, technically considered, as well. They will release the light and peace which will illumine the astral plane and so dispel the illusory nature of his life. He does seem to be emphasizing the astral plane, but also speaking of those planes whereon illusion and Maya predominate. Yes, also those planes as well. And we do note that when we're working with the book Glamour, a World Problem, there is much discussion of illusion and Maya as well as glamour, even though glamour per se, the distortions of the astral plane are the worst, the most dominant this time, and pretty much because our planetary logos is still emotionally polarized, and so is even our solar logos, though working towards mental polarization. I think the solar logos has a greater control of his astral body, being a cosmic initiate of the third degree, of the second degree, than has our planetary logos being a cosmic initiate only of the first degree and not yet of the second degree. Well, we have lots of work to do in the future, don't we, by very technical scientific means, and we're just trying to clear things up in the present so that work can be done. Through other groups, another type of energy must flow, producing another type of interrelation and communication. It's so interesting. All of this is being done from the point of view, all this explanation is being offered from the point of, let's see if you can get that, from the point of view of communication, or the bringing into relation of energies which were not heretofore related. So another type of energy is coming in. These groups will bring about the right healing of the personalities of individuals in all aspects of their nature. In all aspects of their nature, there will be not only etheric healing, but astral healing and mental healing as well. So you could kind of wonder, well, what is the difference then between that, what the psychologists do and what the healers do? And I think he has a different view of the function of the psychologists, and so often those who are pursuing therapeutic psychology at the present time would belong among the third group of magnetic healers, working especially on emotional, mental, or psychological healing the Kama manasic body. There would even be philosophical healers as well, healing the method of thinking and rendering it harmoniously related with truth. So these groups, and many of them are now emerging, will bring about the right healing of the personalities of individuals in all aspects of their nature. The work intended is the intelligent transmission of energy to various parts of the nature. Notice here, he's really emphasizing all three, mental, astral, and physical. Maybe there's not so much mental healing going on right now, but there could be as man becomes more mentally focused. A lot of it is physical and astral. So the work intended is the intelligent transmission of energy to various parts of the nature, mental, astral, and physical, of the human being through the right circulation and organization of force. Well, there's a lot of the Uranian seventh ray involved in this process. So much of the Uranian seventh ray involved here. And also Mercury, Gemini, Aquarius, all of those are connected with circulation and bringing into relationship with each other, harmonious relation, the different kinds of energies which were not related before and which needed to be related if healing, harmonization was to come. Healing must eventually be carried forward by groups which act as the intermediaries between the plane of spiritual energy, either soul energy, intuitional energy, or will energy, because let's just say healing can descend from all aspects of the spiritual triad, and the patient or group of patients, and this last point is to be noted, healing of groups by groups. This is probably attempted in some places, and this will be one of the glories of the New Age, realizing that these healing energies can, in fact, be received and transmitted from group to group, and the Augean stables can be cleansed. I mean, when we're going through healing, really, we are cleansing the Augean stables, all of the unsuitable accumulation in our various vehicles, which blocks the true flow of soul energy, without which there can be no true health. So healing must eventually be carried forward by groups which act as intermediaries. This whole idea of the intermediary is Mercurian in nature. Is Mercurian in nature. And between the plane of spiritual energy, now what's considered spiritual? Well, spiritual energy, anything of the soul on its own plane, and also from the triad. Even the energy of will. This is really interesting to me, because that will energy itself, can there be, we would ask, can there be diseases of the will? And apparently so. And when there are diseases of the will, the individual or the group cannot propel forward and will be stagnant. The group idea must always be remembered, for this will distinguish the New Age methods from the past. The group idea, okay, can I find it? Must always be remembered. And, Pisces was the age in which individualism really emerged in a broad scale through discrimination. But now the age of the group emerges, and distinctly qualified groups will emerge as well. The group idea must always be remembered, for this will distinguish the New Age methods from the past. Excuse me for speaking too rapidly. I'm always accused of having the galloping mind. It's Mercury in Aries, and watch out for those horses. So this, the work will be group work for the group. Just the way hierarchy, a great group works for humanity, a great group. Hierarchy, a great group, works for humanity, also a great, though lesser, group. The members will work as souls and not as individuals, and there will be, in these serving groups, a sense of soul union. A sense of soul union in these serving groups. They will learn to communicate healing energy from the reservoir of living force to the patients, and maybe these healing groups will be found along ray lines, because I'm reminded of how the first ray type, pulls or grabs or seizes, maybe better, from the reservoir of living energy, the vitality needed, and throws it into the patient. This is very different from the way other rays work. And so perhaps these healing groups will be united on the basis of the predominating soul ray of the members of the groups. It would seem practical to do that, but then, of course, maybe the groups that they healed would also have to be distinctive. The groups to be healed by specialized ray healing groups might also have to be differentiated according to ray. And I would suppose that there could be specialities for healing. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but if those in a particular group had passed through successfully certain experiences of healing nature in this life or in a previous, they would be well suited to direct the necessary healing energy to those who are now suffering from what they suffered from and overcame. Well, the book Esoteric Healing, of course, is coming up later, but some of the precursors of what is said there can be found here. Other groups of communicators will act as transmitters of two aspects of divine energy, knowledge, and wisdom. Well, one is reminded here of the third ray, and its relationship to education. Third ray and fifth ray, both related to education, but the second ray as well, of course. So knowledge and wisdom must be thought of in terms of energies. So communicators of, transmitters of, making sure that there is contact between these energy sources and other energy fields which are the recipients. It's so interesting here, I've read quite a bit in what the Tibetan has said about the 10 seed groups, and we use that quite a bit in the Morya Federation, but here are different modes of communication, different modes of describing what DK set forth anent those other groups, and these different angles of description add to the understanding, no question about it. So knowledge and wisdom are involved here, and that is the educational process. Their work concerns itself with the education of the masses as a direct intermediary between the higher mind and the lower mind. So they will become an antichironic intermediary between higher and lower mind. These groups will become an antichironic intermediary between higher and lower mind. And with the building of the Antiskrana. Okay. And their task is that of linking the 3 points of interest upon the mental plane, the higher mind, the soul, and the lower mind. Therefore, we can see how much the fifth ray is involved in this work with its word of power. 3 minds unite. And that's why DK talked about the educational institutions being the lower method of teaching truth for those upon the fifth ray. Interestingly enough, for the second ray, we had the churches, and for the higher method of teaching, it was the science of initiation. So education is very much connected with the luminosity of the fifth ray, but also through the will to evolve, the general trend of which strengthens education. We have the third ray, because it's a third ray aspect of the will. So that there is established a group Antiskarana between the kingdom of souls and the world of men. And, from this point of view, man will know how to access the higher mind. Okay. Heavenly man. Oh, that won't do, will it? Higher mind. Okay. So that is a little different discussion. And, sometimes we who are involved in educating aspirants and disciples, if we are involved in educating aspirants and disciples, what are we doing? Are we part of a group 4, or are we training disciples for initiation, which is one of Master DK's tasks? It's just like the psychologist asking, well, look, am I a member of the group of psychologists, or am I a member of the healing group working with the psyche? Well, I think it is possible here that the groups that are working like the Arcane School is, and Moria Federation and School for Esoteric Studies, and other groups of this sort, really are intermediaries between the spiritual triad and the world of men. They are playing the role of Mercury, and they are helping human beings to unite the three minds. And we are doing this in the Moria Federation, helping students to unite the three aspects of mind, but more as well as any group for discipleship training must offer, more than just the mind. Anyway, an interesting perspective offered here, which should be compared with the 10 seed groups. Okay, the political workers, it's number 5. Interesting, the connection of the 5 and the 1. 5 being an aspect of the 1 and resolving upon the 1, as the Tetractys does show, the 5th point under the 1st point. Political work will occupy other groups more specifically than does any other branch of work. These groups communicate the quality of imposition and an authority that is lacking in many other branches of this divine group activity, but we might say, though perhaps not perhaps not all groups. Some may have imposition, and not only the political workers. Whoop. The work is largely first-rate work. It embodies the method whereby the divine will works out in the consciousness of the races and nations. There's a lot of sacrifice in it. You know, you think about people in Russia, 20 million of them dying in World War II, and you think the way Stalin, you know, maybe as much gray as white, drove and imposed sacrifice upon the masses that were under his impression. So there was a huge imposition there, and many suffer under such impositions. At least the outer form suffers. If you can imagine, it made a big impression on me. Russian soldiers being so under-equipped that one rifle was given to 2 of them. And when one of them was hit, the other was supposed to pick up the rifle and continue. Members of this group will have much first ray in their constitution. Well, we know not exclusively so. There is no pure first ray type extant at this time. Their work is to act as channels of communication between. See, again, communication, always new modes of communication. So we really see how the new modes of communication are being applied to work as channels of communication between the department of the Manu and the race of men. It is a noble thing to be channels for the will of God, and I think this is pretty much the way the paragraph appears in Discipleship in the New Age, Volume 1. there might be some borrowing going on. It happens throughout the books here and there. The quality of imposition, they have authority coming from the inner self, inner God, from first principles, largely first-ray work. The divine will works out in the consciousness of races and nations, even though those who submit are unconscious of that will. Specifically, they know they have to submit to various commands and authorities and so forth, but they do not, even though the divine will is driving them, they are not really conscious of what that will is. I mean, in the Second World War, we might have said, well, the forces of light or light must prevail. That's a broad generalization. Or let's just say that savagery, barbarity has to be defeated. Those large generalizations perhaps are aspects of the divine will or epitomes of the divine will, and maybe everybody could understand those. Then, the sixth group. Some groups will be, in a pronounced sense, channels between the activity of the second ray, that of the world teacher at the present time of the Christ, Lord Maitreya, who holds this office, and the world of men. So channels of communication, really. Channels of communication between, I think I'm going to, since the word communication is so much used here, I'm going to use it as an abbreviation this way. Channels of communication between the activity of the second ray and that of the world teacher. The energy of the second ray and let's just say not just the sixth ray, as is found presently in a number of world religions and their attempt to impose their ways upon others. The energy of the second ray must pour through such groups of students, notice that the scholarliness of the second ray is included, and believers. So it's sort of like, here we have second ray, and believers, well, loosely we could say sixth ray, and allied groups of thinkers and workers. And there will be many of these. This fact is to be noted. Those who work in cooperation with the members of the New World Religion group, we might say, or the religious workers. We see one who's very prominent on the world stage today. It is the new Pope, seeming to emerge more under the impression of the true second ray, so it seems. There will be many such groups. The platform of the New World Religion, and I suppose just the platform at first, will be built by them. Okay. Not all of these groups will emerge at the same time. That does have to be understood. Just the way, well, let's put it down. Not all of these groups will emerge at the same time, just as not all of the new esoteric schools will emerge at the same time. A few groups onward will have an interesting function, but one which will not materialize for a long while. We might say we have to know more about the ether, or until the work of the building forces of the universe are better understood, and the human and deva groups must come into closer communication. So this will be coincident with the development of etheric vision, yes, and so it'll be a while, although DK was telling us that even toward the end of the last century, the ether should be in a greater type of movement, and so will be more detectable as a feature of the eye, a function of the eye. So more seen by many. And in the semi-light, the movement of the ethers can be seen. A lot of people don't pay attention to it. They're actually seeing it, but they just dismiss it and say, oh, well, that's what my eye does in the dark. But actually, you may be seeing that thing they used to call chaos, which is the movement of the ethers. So this will be coincident with the development of etheric vision. Not so far away. It says a long while and away, but already etheric vision is emerging. These groups will act as channels of communication or intermediaries between the energies which constitute the forces which construct the form, the fabricators or the outer garment of God, and human spirits. So it's pretty clear that the scientific group, scientific servers, will, among other things, bring together the human and Deva evolution. But why does he say spirits, human spirits? Because human spirits are clothed in Devic energies. So perhaps the clothing or the building of vehicles will be improved, because the human spirits have to be rightly clothed in the reincarnational process. The possibility is therefore to be noted that the main initial work will be concerned with the problem of reincarnation. Okay, well, some of this is sounding an awful lot like what appeared in Discipleship in the New Age. Shall we just take a quick look and just see if in Dinah 1, around page 40 or so, we're going to get... Oh, that's Discipleship 2. I got the wrong one. Okay. Let's just see what it said and whether it's a repetition. They will reveal the essential spirituality. No, it's not an exact. You will note here how, consequently, the possibility that the group's main initial work will be concerned with the problem of reincarnation. Well, similar ideas worded differently, some sentences borrowed directly. That problem deals with the taking of an outer garment or form under the law of rebirth. Some of the sentences are the same. That problem deals with the taking of an outer garment or form under the law of rebirth. So how to arrange for the building of bodies of higher quality. Now, a lot of this is so the law of karma will also have to be understood, because so much of that building is under karmic liability. But maybe when much karma is lived through, those in these kinds of groups will have a freer hand in building a more ideal form. Therefore, when these groups are organized, it will be with that subject, that the members will at first work. And there we see, here we see, oops, boop, 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 boop. So here, test, yes. Here we see why this has to be some time in the future. The etheric body has not really even been recognized, and the idea of the soul is only accepted by a few. The inner vehicles are not thought to be real. So the whole angels, well, they're considered the stuff of myth and of religion. So all of these things have to be presented in a more factual and scientific manner before anything like this kind of project can swing into activity. Yet the etheric body is close to being discovered. But that's just the beginning of a process of discoveries which will lead to this kind of work in the future. So they will make a deeper and different study than has heretofore been undertaken of the law of rebirth. So this is the different sentence, you see. That problem deals with the taking of the outer garment. So we really need to put what is said in Dinah 1 in 39 and 40 together with what is said here. So let's just say we need to put the paragraphs in Dinah 1 with these paragraphs for a more complete picture. Okay. Well, anyway, the scientific servers will have an initial task, and they really will be working in the Aquarian age with the etheric manipulation, with the discovering something of the function of the Deva kingdoms, with a kind of eugenics that is really scientific and not racist. A kind of scientific and non-racist eugenics. Because all of us are souls. We've been in all the races. You know how it was as the Nazis were practicing it, they would eliminate all kinds of people, you know, but what they called the mentally defectives, they would eliminate them, and anybody who was defective in form or in emotions, they would go through the so-called insane asylums and eliminate those people for the sake of what they thought would be the emergence of better racial qualities. It was a puristic kind of macabre reflection of the second-degree aspirations of some of the leaders. Well, let's go on. This is interesting and spoken in a different way. Some groups of energy communicators and transmitters will be, well, I feel tempted to put this in. COMMR, communicator. Communicator. Okay, that's a good one. And then COMMS, communications. Hoping to spell it right. Communications. And communicators. Communicators. Okay. Well, will we ever use it so much as here? Some groups of energy communicators and transmitters will carry illumination between groups of thinkers. Well, he brings this unusual function of psychology is brought forward immediately. And it's not what we would expect, because we've been used to thinking of therapeutic psychology and of research psychology, and not of the unification and understanding, unification of groups and the understanding between groups. So some groups of energy communicators and transmitters will carry illumination between groups of thinkers. What each group could have for the other groups, and how groups can benefit from each other. They are illuminators of group thoughts. Now that's a plural there. And here in the earlier, is it earlier or is it later? They will act as transmitters of illumination between thinkers and illuminators of group thought. So there's the singular, and here is the plural. It seems to me that we might be better with the singular. So it seems. Anyway, they are illuminators of group thought and revealing, sharing the light between thinking groups. They transmit energy from one thought center to another, and that, of course, is a direct sentence in the other one as well. And so, they are enriching thought centers with the energy of other thought centers. They transmit above everything else the energy of ideas, so this connects them with the Buddhic plane, and this is their major function. The world of ideas is a world of dynamic force centers, and interestingly, the head of psychology in the present age is a fourth ray master, connecting thus with the Buddhic plane. This should not be forgotten. Okay. The communicating of the energies of ideas as these are getting ready, I suppose, to precipitate as part of the divine plan. These ideas have to be contacted and noted as they focus, or as they, quote, in a way, live on the Buddhic plane. Their energy has to be assimilated and transmitted, and this is the function of those force centers which will express themselves along these lines, these groups. And note, he is not yet calling them the psychologists. He does so over here. The psychologists, and everything about them is said pretty much, these ideas have to be contacted and noted, and their energy has to be assimilated and transmitted. So it's really understanding the psyche in the various groups and the energies which emanate from them and are projected from them, and how these energies can be brought into archetypal, I would say, relation with each other, making the whole, well, let's just say, making the archetypal a reflection. A reflection? No. Reflection. Reflection of the archetypal worlds within these groups. So what is the true place within the scheme conceived by pure reason? What is the place, the harmonious place of these groups as seen from the Buddhic plane? The psychologists, well, the psychologists can simply help groups understand each other, just as earlier they helped individuals understand each other. So if there is communication between groups, the understanding will grow. All right. It's interesting, though, that he doesn't use the name psychologists here. Maybe he is becoming more specific in the Dynabook, particularly. Because, after all, right there he was forming those groups. See, that was his intention, was actually to bring individuals together to actually form the groups. He intended to form all 10 as seed groups, I'm sure, but World War II entered in, and maybe the group personnel were not responding as they perhaps should have. And that was the reason, I think, among other things, that this experiment had to be discontinued and a new one undertaken, which brought together the best elements found in all of those groups. And it was then perhaps a less specific approach to particular modes of communication. All right, here are groups working in another category. Will have for their specific work the stimulating of the minds of men so that alignment can take place. Now, this is not exactly, this parallels the economic workers, but he does not mention the name. Let's see if the economic workers are psychometrical. Financiers and economists, yes, psychometrical workers. But it's certainly looked at in a much more spiritual manner than simply working in the field of finance and economics as we understand those fields at the present time. They act primarily as channels of communication between the soul of man and the soul in any form. Other kingdoms, and maybe the human kingdom too. They will be the great psychometrical workers, for a psychometrist is one whose soul is sensitive to the soul in other forms of life. Well, we could say human and non-human. Yes, human and non-human. They evoke the soul of the past. Well, and this is interesting because the Lord of history is the third ray Lord. Third ray Lord? No. Third ray Lord. No, I didn't make that, as I thought I had. They evoke the soul of the past, primarily linking it with the present and finding it also indicative of the future. Well, this functions under the law of economy to a degree. Right, to a degree. Under the law of economy. Let's see what it says otherwise. Well, okay, and here it adds to it. They will work with the energies and forces which express themselves through the interchange and values of commerce, and they will deal with the law of supply and demand, and with the great principle of sharing. This is so needed in the, well, it's one of the requirements for the return of the Christ, whichever governs divine purpose. They will be the great psychometrical workers, for a psychometrist is one whose soul is sensitive, etc. Then he goes on with the sharing. The principle of sharing must govern economic relations. So he emphasizes economics much more, even though it's the same group. Economic relations in the future, and is their soul quality or energy, and hence their work of relating soul with soul. There will be this sharing when people are related soul to soul. They also evoke the soul of the past, linking it with the present and finding it likewise indicative of the future. Let's just say the best values of the past and the present as history and contemporary study indicates and anticipate futuristically the emergent values of the future. Well, there are some, frankly enigmatical ideas there that require quite a bit of pondering, but, let's just say the right use and of the various kingdoms of nature. Let's just say not just there for man's pleasure and abuse. You've seen how some of the animals are raised to end their days in the slaughterhouses, and you see incredible, inhumanity towards animals. There's a peculiar karma between the Lord of the Fourth Kingdom and the Lord of the Third Kingdom, dating from the moon chain, we've been told in Cosmic Fire. But there seems to be a better relation between man and the second kingdom of nature, but this is not just for man's personal pleasure. Let's just say the relationship between man and the lower kingdoms of nature is not just for man's personal pleasure and satisfaction. And this will be realized when the soul of the lower kingdoms can be contacted, and when the planetary whole is realized. So this is coming, and there are people with certain gifts. I think, the third ray will be prominent in this group, and I suspect the seventh ray to a certain extent also. Well, now comes the, this is interesting because some of the money work, seems here related to the 10th group of magicians, or creative, well, shall I call them magicians? Call them creative workers. So there's some overlap here, but remember the 10th group is formed with 27, and 3 taken from each of the, is that correct? Each of the previous 9 groups. Members of other groups will be communicators between the third aspect of divinity as it expresses itself through the creative process and the world of human thought. So really, what can we call magical creative workers? Master R was that, and he also could generate alchemically that which was considered to be of great value by normal human beings, gold, jewels, gems. They will link or blend life and form creatively. So they have a lot of the third and seventh ray as well. Today, unknowingly and without any true understanding, they bring about the concretization of the energy of desire, which in its turn brings about the concretization of money. So remember, financiers and economists are working in the 9th group, but here we have the concretization of the energy of desire, which brings about that symbol called money. This consequently necessitates the materialization of things, thus the 7th and 3rd rays related. And what we know of magicians is that they materialize things. At least that's one of the popular views of what the magician does. They have a most difficult task, and that is why it is only during the past 150 years that the science of world finance, see, it's an overlap, really. The science of world finance has made its appearance. But now, is this said over here? They are related to the 9th group, because knowingly or unknowingly they are bringing about the concretization. No, different things are said in these different places. They are concerned with the concretization of money, incidentally. Their work is also largely philosophical, concerned with the task of relating factually and scientifically the other 9 types of groups so that they may work creatively. So the 7th ray is involved here because the 7th ray always contributes to the consummation of the other ray types, and I suppose to the consummation of the other ray groups. A kind of synthesis is here brought about, and it is a synthetic group with representatives from each of the other groups. We'll go over these other 10 at another time and maybe compare them here. But more is said here. They will deal with the divine aspect of money, and earlier it said, incidentally, they will be involved in the concretization of money. Here we're talking about the divine aspect of money as a representation of the 3rd great aspect of divinity. They will regard money as the means whereby divine purposes can be carried forward. So that is a creative function. They will handle money as the agency through which the building forces of the universe can carry on the work needed. So a new world will literally be built. And herein lies the clue. Those building forces will be increasingly occupied with the building of the subjective temple of the Lord rather than with the materializing of that which meets man's desires. So these are subjective builders, and helping every human being to build the Temple of Solomon. T.M. of Solomon? Okay, don't I have that? Well, want it, you know. Temple of Solomon. Oh, yes, I have it, but it's got to be in capital letters. Oop. Okay. So this distinction merits consideration. Remember that the seventh ray has everything to do with the etheric body. Seventh ray and the etheric body. And the etheric body is a reflection of the present condition for all human beings of the Temple of Solomon. So according to the condition of our egoic lotus or of our Temple of Solomon, so will be the condition of our etheric body. Well, so there are significant differences here. Let's just see. Well, this is going to take quite a while. I can see that we are not going to finish this law of elevation by any means in the next one. No, certainly not. And then perhaps here are the 7 laws of the soul tabulated, and then we get into the law of expansive response. I think we certainly have 2 more programs on this law of group progress. So we'll do a little more. And now we're at the 3rd point. I think earlier, we're on page 193, we had 4 factors that were going to be explained. Here it is in Roman numerals. They are experiments in founding focal points, starting focal points through which energies can flow, and they are involved in new modes of communication, new modes and techniques of communication. And now this is the 3rd in that 4-part series. Our long discussion of the different groups had to do with the modes of communication. So a little bit here anyway we'll work on, and then we'll simply keep going, I suppose. They are the externalization of an inner existing condition. It must be realized that these groups are not a cause but an effect of inner energies. That they may themselves have an initiatory effect as they work upon the physical plane is no doubt true, but they themselves are the product of inner activity and of subjective aggregations of force which must perforce become objective. So the inner groups are always of greater potency, well, greater size and potency than their outer expressions. So we have to learn, I think it's under the law of expansive response, or one of those 2 final soul laws, to really come en rapport with the inner groups that are the very life of these outer groups which are beginning to manifest. The work of the group members is to keep, as a group, on close rapport with the inner groups. DK tried to encourage those members who still were in the body to still remain in communication with some of the members who had left the body and who were working on the inner planes. So the inner workers must be kept in mind, which form nevertheless one large active group, both inner and outer, one large active group. This central group force will then pour through the groups insofar as the group members as a group do the following, right? So, well, the inner groups are one large, inner groups are one large subjective group. uh, a kind of reflection of the hierarchy. Um, of the hierarchy. But not exactly, because there are 10, you see. But all of the, the outer groups are meant eventually to work in complete cooperation with each other, and the inner groups, which are the very foundation and substance of the emerging seed groups, already do work in harmony and cooperation with each other. I suppose especially, probably they've been formed since the great Buddhic rising of hierarchy around the year 1925, rising to the Buddhic plane. Then these groups could be formed, and the new group of world servers is formed, and the outer specialized seed groups are formed. All of this happening in the last 100 years. So the central group, force, composed of all the inner groups and their forces, will then be pouring through the groups, insofar as the group members, as a group, that's the group idea always emphasized, keep on rapport with the inner sources of power, and, let's just say, remember where their strength comes from. Never lose sight of the group objective, whatever that objective may be, and it is a specialized objective. The glamour group or observers of reality are not doing the same thing as the education group, and so on. Cultivate a dual capacity to apply the laws of the soul to the individual life and the laws of the group to group life. But of course, the laws of the soul are really laws of the group. These are the rules of group life. So there's a way in which the individual can apply the laws of the soul, I would say, and a way in which the group itself can apply the laws of the soul, and use all forces which may flow into the group in service, and learn therefore to register that force and use it correctly. So it's right use of energy. So what do we have here? In other words, the inner groups will have an energy which can pour through the outer groups based upon rapport, right objectives, application of the laws of the soul, and right use of all energies. All right. Well, I think, we're getting to that point now. So, would the following sequence of statements convey anything to our minds in this connection? It is a statement of fact and is not in the least symbolic in its terminology, except insofar as all words are inadequate symbols of inner truths. Okay, so we'll start there when we come back. This is the end of the Laws of the Soul webinar commentaries, EP2, and looks like page 193. 193. And beginning, and this was, I think, number, was it 24? Let's see. Maybe we can tell. Yes, it's 24. So this is the end of 24. Beginning Laws of the Soul webinar commentaries number 24, and beginning of Laws of the Soul webinar commentary number 25, EP2 193. And this is a 2-hour program. So let's look here. Maybe we will sound the Great Invocation. I think that would be a good thing to do. And then go on. So From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Okay, friends, good. We'll move on and continue with our work on the law of group progress. Quite an expansive explanation here of the law of group progress. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.